So this video, I'm really gonna be talking about, the truth about what AA has become and why I quite frankly just don't even like it. I don't like using the word hate, but that's definitely how I honestly feel. And it's called integrity. It's called being straight up. It's called being real. A thing that most of the world can't comprehend because their minds are just making too much noise to really know what it means to be real. Through spiritual experiences is what makes myself real. You know what I mean? And it's really that simple. And I say it's that simple because everything I talk about, it is quite simple. This is going to be pretty complex. And a lot of people aren't going to want to hear this because they say the truth shall set you free. I don't really agree with it. I mean, it's not really, it's setting me free in a way, but it's also making me a little bit upset, you know what I mean? Because I just read A Vision for You in the Big Book. I was asked to do so by a power greater than my thinking. And I'm going to go through that chapter. I'm going to make a video about how Jesus saved my life soon. Just that title. Jesus saved my life, And I'm going to make that video. But everything I speak of, people, they're just gonna be like, what is he talking about, and they can't comprehend that it's the truth. So the truth doesn't set a lot of people free. I work with a few people sometimes, and I don't tell them to work this, I'm not gonna, okay. Let's take a deep breath. I don't tell them to work the 12 steps or go to meetings because that's not the solution. You know what I mean? And I'm gonna get to that real soon. You're gonna hear some real truth. And if you don't want to hear it, then click off the damn video. I don't give a shit. I really don't. So when I work with other people, I'm real with them. I'm like, yeah, you're giving away everything to alcohol, and then they can't comprehend. The truth isn't setting them free. It's really not. And I'm going to be real. That's how I am. So maybe when I work for other people, I'm a lot easier on them at first. And then I start getting a little more hard on them. Not in that, not, you know what I mean? I'm not saying that, don't go there. Okay? But so with the idea of working with other people, I'm going to throw this in there. Don't ever ask a real addict or alcoholic what's it going to take. Because that's a traumatic sentence. Traumatic sentence for them to hear that. Because if they're anything like myself, it's not just taken from them. It's taken out of them. You get what I'm saying? Out of them. What's it going to take? Oh, fuck, shut up. Those are resentments right there that I really had to humbly ask God to remove in a meditation. Because I go throughout my day spiritually. I ask God to bring His peace over my mind every morning. It happens. I pray He continues to do it. He does it. If I have a feeling I don't want to have, I ask God to remove it. It's removed. But nobody's going to do that because they never found themselves as hopeless as me and my sponsor. And that's a different kind of hopeless. I mean, that's next level. You know what I mean? That's next level. So, being free is a very free feeling, because this book isn't just about quitting drinking. It's about solving your life problems. It can work for anybody, even if you're not an alcoholic. It can work for you. You just replace the word alcohol with anything else. Anything else. Porn, sex, no matter what it is. If you really want to have a spiritual experience and you really want to open your mind to a power greater than your mind, or open your mind to, because I need a power much greater than AA meetings to keep me sober. I was going to go tonight, but I'm afraid I'm going to go off on it. I mean, I really am. And, and my sponsor has that same problem. We'll just go off on people because we know the truth. And the truth doesn't seem to set a lot of people free. If you really know what I mean by that. They say, and I'm going to just say some things I disagree with. They say you are who you hang out with. Well, that ain't freaking true. That's not true. If you're your own person, and you live on a spiritual basis of life, you're your own person. Doesn't matter who the hell you hang out with. You're never going to be like them. You know what I mean? You're not who you hang out with if you're your own person. You get what I'm saying? So I'm just saying some stuff I disagree. I don't care what you do. Just take what you want and leave the rest. You know, last night I went to a meeting. I heard a lot of stuff I disagree with, and I do every time. You know, I really do. You know, I know the truth. You know, that's why it makes it so hard to go to an AA meeting. It's because I know the truth. That's why I can't go. Because they don't know the truth. Because they're not even real alcoholics. Most of them in there, no, not even freaking close, dude. You got me ducked up. Hold on. You got me ducked up. I mean, really, bro. You got me. So, I mean, they're not real alcoholics because sometimes, and I'll try a little bit about Bill's story, actually. I'm going to pull out the strap. So, we go to Bill's story, right? So, just give me 1 second. This shouldn't even take me that long. I know this book better than I know a lot of things. See, okay. So I actually will go to meetings sometimes, and I'll share the truth. I don't give a shit. So, it says in Bill's story, I was separated from alcohol one last time. There I humbly offered myself to God. I placed myself under His care and direction. Okay? So, if you're wise enough, you'll know what I just said is that Jesus saved Bill's life. And if it wasn't for Jesus, AA wouldn't exist. And AA was meant to be spiritually and faith-based, but some idiotic cack-sacking, okay, I don't know. Some people, okay, some heavy drinkers, Harding, they got a hold of the program, and it's quite disrespectful to Bill's name. Because he's one of the most wise, charismatic people. You know, he may have done some fucked up shit. You know, we all did. But he did the best he could, and you do the best you can too. You know, I'm just gonna say some stuff I disagree with. I don't care what you think. So, in the program I'm in, this book called The Four Agreements. One of the four agreements is always do your best. I don't believe that because I believe everybody, no matter what they're doing, that is the best they can do. So if you can truly believe that you've always done the best you could, and that everything is always as it's meant to be, and if things were meant to be different. Some people think I just say that shit, but it's the truth. If you can really believe those two things, your life will get a lot better, you know? It absolutely will. But you won't do it, you know, because you never found yourself as hopeless as me and my sponsor. And then I'm just saying, you know, and that is the truth. So, thank you. Come again. So, a vision for you, you know. So, it talks about this really hopeless alcoholic. You know, he doesn't really have any spiritual beliefs. So, I was going to get into this a little bit, and probably quite a bit, actually. So, it says right here, you know, on page 145, I got the first edition. So, he had begun to have a spiritual experience. Okay, so what does that really mean? You know, a spiritual experience, you know, you may have had some. That's where your mind's completely quiet, you know, and your body's blooming. You get what I'm saying? Your body's completely blooming and you're at peace with everything and everyone. So a spiritual experience, what did I say about enlightenment? That equals enlightenment, okay? And that's mind quiet 24/7, body, you know, everything. So then enlightenment equals recovered, okay? Because the book did not say recovering. It freaking doesn't, dude. You know what I mean? Sorry. So this sentence right here, okay, I just read it, okay, about 20 minutes ago. I'm actually in a very, very intense spiritual experience right now. I don't care what you think. I don't freaking give a shit. I don't. I'm just being straight up, okay? And it's not pride, it's not arrogance. See, what I'm doing with this message is I'm trying to spread the truth, okay? I'm a very loving and caring person, I really am. If you could hang out with me for one freaking day, you would know, okay? So don't ever get in your head, okay, and think I'm some freaking, no, I'm not. Okay, so I'm just spreading the truth, okay, and I'm a real MFer, you know, I am, and that's not boasting either, it's the truth. I'm authentic, you know, I've been through a lot of stupid shit, you know, and Jesus Christ, in this book, saved my life. Not the freaking AA program, not the, it actually impacts, but I'll get to, you know. So what it says, so you see a spiritual experience, okay. Oh, you can't even see the book. But he had found God, and in finding God, he found himself. So a spiritual experience first leads you to finding God, and then leads you to finding yourself, okay? Because I am starting to find myself. And as I am reading that, I'm actually getting goosebumps, okay? So, I have found God, and in return, I found myself. I am who I really am now. Maybe I've had some past sobriety, but shit, that was not real sobriety. I was a dry doper, I was a dry drunk, I was just waiting to freaking do it again. You know, I'm free, and being free is a free feeling. What does that really mean? It means being free from everything, okay? Not cured, but recovered from anxiety, depression, worry, stress, and a lot of world don't think that's possible. They don't think that's freaking possible. Anger, but it is possible, because I'm living proof. I don't freak out over it. I got plenty of things I could worry about. Shit, I don't worry about them. You know why? Because everything is just as it is meant to be. And if things were meant to be different, they would be. So, what I said, spiritual experience leads you to finding God. And in finding God, he had found himself. That's me right now. That's happening right now. And it's been happening for over a freaking month. So this is what got me a little sassy, okay? I was gonna go to a meeting tonight, you know, but I suggest it's probably not a good idea. Probably not. I'm just envisioning what would happen, okay? So, what it says right here on page 146, 140 for the shorty, okay? Oh, one night a week for a meeting to be attended, okay? And I'm reading this, okay? I can't show it. I could show it in your face, but I will probably end up doing that to people someday. And I probably already do, okay? Attended by anyone or everyone interested in a spiritual way of life. Okay, so AA, that's proof right there in this book that AA was meant to be faith-based and spiritually based, but some freaking, some people, okay, got a hold of it, and that's just my dedicate, okay, got a hold of it and freaking ruined it, okay, so they wonder why so many real alcoholics are out there dying and suffering, because they ruined what the program was supposed to be, and that's proof right there, okay? A week for a meeting to be attended by anyone or everyone interested in a spiritual way of not life. Not some goofy frickin', dumb frickin' whatever they do in AA. I don't give a shit. I can't go. I really can't. It impacts my thinking. So even last night it impacted my thinking. So what did I went in the bathroom and I just asked God, this is not arrogance, this is the truth. Okay? I can't say that enough. I just prayed. I said, God, please allow me to leave everything at this meeting because there is not a damn thing I get out of that shit. I go to bring something to it. No, I get something out of it. That's what I do every day in my life. That's something my sponsor taught me to do. And that's what I do. You know, this is what I'm doing right now. I'm contributing to my life right now because we either contribute to our lives or our deaths. You get what I'm saying? And for most of my life, if not all of it, up until now or a month ago, really, I was just contributing to my death. This is the most real sobriety I've ever had. I don't even really count the time I had in the past. You know, I was sober, but I wasn't mentally sober. You get what I'm saying? So that's just proof right there. That is literal proof that AA has been. I'm not even upset. You know, it's just a different form. It's called dedication anger. Okay, dedication anger is something I just came up with right now. Okay, because my mind is so quiet that I'm reliving knowledge I didn't even know I had. So dedication anger is when you're so dedicated to something because it saved your life. What they don't realize, people that go in there and thump the book, okay, are people that were truly hopeless, beyond hopeless. I mean, literally just beyond hopeless. I mean, I really was. You know, I never knew how I was going to stop. You know what I mean? I really didn't. So, that's proof right there. Okay, so that's the truth. Yeah. So here it says, being restored and united under one God, because there is only one God, and that's Jesus. Okay, so being restored and united under one God. Okay, so if you're a real alcoholic, you know, and most of y'all ain't even freaking real. I know my dad is, my sponsor is, you know, my mom homie is, you know what I mean? So I stick with the right crowd, and I really do. But you are not who you hang out with if you're your own person. So, what that means, being restored, because everybody thinks it's just sobriety time. I tell them being restored. No, it's not. I mean, I'll tell you one thing, man. When I sobered up, I was sober, and I was walking around the fucking streets, blotting nonsense, waving my fucking hands around. Seriously. Really. I was that guy that you see on the streets, picking bugs off their skin. Okay, roaming around, blotting nonsense, waving my arms, yelling and screaming at kids on the street. That was me. That was me. For years of doing that and giving away this to that. You know what I mean? Until I could give my life to Christ and live on a spiritual basis of life that is in this book. And that's what AA is meant to be, which is really what makes it difficult for people like myself. I mean, it's not difficult. I mean, it's freaking easy. Where everybody acts like sobriety is hard, it's not. And that's not arrogance either. The problem's been removed. You know, I don't even think about it. It's a fact. I just, you wanna know how I know this? I'm in my grandma's boot. So I went to Greeley, okay, and I was like, I'm gonna test out my new restored sanity, my new restored life. Come into Greeley, trigger free. You know, I spent probably freaking 4 to 5 years getting high on the streets of Greeley. You know, maybe, I don't know how long, okay, I spent more time in Loveland, you know, but I spent a good chunk of change in my own time getting high in Greeley, okay? So anywhere I go in Greeley, there's a memory of me getting high. There's a memory of me doing shit on the, you know, it doesn't matter. That's all been removed, okay? I can go to Greeley now. I don't even remember any of those memories because they're in the past, and the past doesn't exist. I've been reborn on a spiritual level, okay, that has conquered my addiction to use drugs. And I say in any form, maybe I do a little nicotine sometimes. Maybe there's some other shit I'm gonna do too someday. I don't give a shit what you think. I really don't care. Because I'm that free, and being free is a free feeling. You know, and when you don't care what other people think, when you're just doing, all you want to do as a spiritual being is help other people. You know, I try to go to meetings because I want to sponsor people. But the only alcoholic I can help is the hopeless alcoholic. Because that was me. Recover on a spiritual basis. Okay, so what I believe, and this is my own belief. Any alcoholic in those rooms who didn't have to humbly offer themselves to God like I did, Bill did, my sponsor did, my dad did, my mom homie did. You know, they ain't even fucking real alcoholics, dude. They're not. They're, you know what I mean? And you may know what that means. You know, because they're not. You know, if you got sober without God's help, at least just God's help, okay, then you're not a real alcoholic. So recovered on a spiritual basis, because the spiritual basis of life is what leads to enlightenment. And then that leads to recovered. And recovered is when you're just completely trigger free. You know, you can come across alcohol, and you can walk into a liquor store, whatever, it doesn't matter. You're recovered. You know, you can do anything you want. You're a free man. You're free. You're absolutely free. So right here. Fellowship of the Spirit. Okay, I love this paragraph. Our book is meant to be suggestive only. You know what I mean? Fellowship of the Spirit. That means the fellowship is meant to be a spiritual fellowship that's all about Jesus. And that's not what it is. And that's why I can't go. Because I can't deal with it. And that's not arrogance. That is the truth. Okay, I don't care what you think. I don't. And I just really just told you a lot of the truth about AA today. And soon I'm going to have more videos. I'm going to have Jesus Save My Life. You know, I'm going to probably, I have terrible memory. God actually has to remind me of some of the stuff I'm going to do. You know, because I've been fried, but I've been restored to sanity at the same time. Because if you really knew how insane I was and how much of a miracle I truly am, then you would know that all this shit is real. So pretty soon, I'm just going to make some videos about, and the Jesus Save My Life video, that's going to be a lot about myself in the past when I was living on the streets, when I was doing clear every day, you know? But that's over now. I've been reborn on a spiritual basis of life by giving my life to Christ and reading this book. Because the AA program didn't save my life, therapy didn't save my life. Jesus did, and the way of life in this book did. I pass.